What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. It is time to do my first list for the 2013 end of the year lists. And there are some albums that are going to be mentioned from this list, from the honorable mentions and from the top 25 of the year that I didn't get a chance to review, so there's quite a lot. So this is my personal pick for the top 5 disappointments and worst albums of 2013. Now, these are my picks from these peaks, and these are not facts, these are opinions, so let's just whiz through this. Number 5, Megadeth, Super Collider. Super Collider, as I said in my review, is a colossal disappointment, and it isn't their worst album by any means. The worst thing from this album is the lyrical content from Dave Mustaine, which is terribly weak and generic than ever. And I do like some songs, but for the instrumentation, because I wouldn't pay attention to the lyrics at all. The songs I do like from the instrumentation are Kingmaker, Built for War, and Don't Turn Your Back. But other songs like Super Collider, Burn, Off the Edge, The Blackest Crow, Forget to Remember, and other songs to me are just really lackluster songs. However, I do like Dance in the Rain. I forgot to add that in. And remember when I said that that Euthanasia was a pretty bad album? I take that back seriously. I have to say that Euthanasia is a better album than this. So I wouldn't waste my time or wasting my money on spending this album for my own album collection. So yeah, so Super Collider isn't really that strong or perfect of an album. It's just a really disappointing attempt. Number 4 is Device, self-titled album. Now, I gave this album a chance, like the other albums that I will mention on this list. But Device's self-titled is extremely more hit or miss and mediocre than Super Collider, and I really don't seem to the point of getting to remember these songs in my head, because to me these songs are forgettable. And I was pretty surprised that this album has quite a bunch of guest appearances involving M. Shadows, Serj Tankian, and Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath. But to me these songs all the way through are just hit or miss and generic industrial sounds of music. And I did understand David Draymond's experimentation for what he was trying to do for the music, but I mainly remember him being in Disturbed. So yeah, I would rather listen to Disturbed more than this album and this band. So I wouldn't really recommend this album. So yeah, if you like it, fair play. Number 3 are the 2 volumes of The Wrong Side of Heaven and The Righteous Side of Hell by Five Finger Death Punch. I used to be a big fan of this band, but for me they've gone right downhill, and these 2 albums of concept albums are really more lackluster, and Volume 1 is really weak with terrible lyricism and generic with repetition of swearing. And it is just annoying all the way through for the most part. And some of the songs to me are just, not really that great. And some are repetitive. And, like Ivan Moody's lyrics. Volume 2, as I said, from Volume 1 is a little bit of an improvement, but it really doesn't make much more better or a bigger difference than Volume 1. It's pretty much similar like Volume 1. But I do like some of the different styles of songs from Volume 2, like The Agony of Regret, Battleborn, and Cold. And I do dig some of the songs from Volume 2, and some of Volume 1, Lift Me Up, and the other songs. But the rest are really, really weak songs. I really cannot dig into them, because I really didn't like how they all turned out to be for my own opinions. So yeah, I wouldn't really listen to this band that much anymore. So I still have my copy of The Way of the Fist, but I wouldn't even remember Five Finger Death Punch being one of the most generic bands for my opinion. and I do understand what they're trying to do with these two albums, but to me they are poor attempts from these two albums from their discography. Number 2 is an album that I really didn't notice or realize it was released, and I checked it out, and it is the third instrumental album from one musician, and this album is Sol Austin Manifestan by Burzum. I might have completely butchered that, I do apologize, Norwegian texts. But anyways, this album is terribly boring all the way through, and I really tried to really get into the music, but what made it repetition packed is that the music itself is just the same keys and sounds from the sounds of synthesizers that's being repeated over and over and over again, and it doesn't go into a different key or direction from the music. And I know that Varg was trying to do something new, like his other two instrumental albums, than carrying on to his black metal stuff. But this album is really a drag fest for me, and Fallen is 10 times better than this album, and I do love Fallen a lot, and it's one of my favorite albums of black metal. But and yes, Varg in person is a waste of space, so I wouldn't get into that again. So yeah, and I know that Varg was trying to make this album dark and ambient, but it spoils it for me from how the album turns out. But I do like the sounds of the production, and you know, the artwork as well. The artwork is beautiful, and I do love it. But as a whole, this album is just, as I said, it's a dragfest, boring album. And now we've come to number 1, the biggest disappointment and the worst album of 2013. And I know that one of my favorite people, Hogan McFife, likes this album. And I forgot to mention, excuse me, that Luke Hammerhard liked the new Burzum album, so I respect that. But this album, to me, is the biggest, atrocious, horrible, terrible, and the biggest disaster of this year. I could come up with some other words, but I really have to get this album out of my chest. And this album is Temper Temper by Bullet for My Valentine. This album is, in my opinion, a contender for being one of the worst albums of all time. Yeah, you heard me right. My opinion. So yeah, every song on this album sounded exactly the same, and a lot of other things are just horrible all the way through from start to finish, with laughable and stupidity of lyricism, and the unoriginal, uninspired song creativity, and the way the songs deliver are just really, really bad stuff. And I had a lot of hatred feelings on this album because I despised it that much. But like I said, the only two good things are some of the guitar solos and the production, but the rest are just completely garbage from here on out. So stay away from this album, but if you like it, as I said, fair play. I have no problems with that at all, but these are my opinions on this album and the other albums I've mentioned from this list. So, Bullet for My Valentine's Temper Temper is none other than, to my honest opinion, is a complete piece of garbage. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's going to be finishing off this video, and I'll move on to the better stuff of the honorable mentions and the top 25 of the year. So thank you guys for watching, and this is my list for the top 5 disappointments and worst albums of the year. Thank you guys for watching, and keep it metal.